My sister got pregnant by my fiance, and my family decided to defend her because she was younger. So I got my revenge in the cruelest way possible. Before continuing the story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you won't miss more stories, and leave your like on the video. My name is Lindsay, and I need to tell you about the worst thing that ever happened to me. Actually, scratch that. The worst thing that was done to me, by my own family. 3 weeks before my wedding, I was the happiest I'd ever been. 28 years old, engaged to the man I'd loved for 4 years, planning the ceremony of my dreams. Everything was perfect. The venue was booked, this beautiful garden estate outside the city. The dress was altered and hanging in my closet. Invitations had been sent to 200 guests. My younger sister had even agreed to be my maid of honor, which honestly surprised me because we'd never been super close. But I thought maybe this would bring us together. I should have known better. It was a Thursday night. My parents had invited me over for dinner, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the tension in the room when I arrived. My dad couldn't look at me. My mom kept wringing her hands. And my sister, 23 years old and usually so bubbly and carefree, sat there with this strange, defiant look on her face. Then she dropped the bomb. She stood up in the middle of dinner, placed her hand on her still flat stomach, and announced she was pregnant with my fiance's baby, and that they'd been sleeping together for 6 months. 6 months. I remember the exact sound of my fork hitting the plate. I remember my mother gasping but not saying anything to defend me. I remember my father telling me to calm down when I started screaming. But most of all, I remember my sister's face, completely blank. No remorse, no shame, nothing. She just stood there like she'd announced what she wanted for dessert. My fiancé tried calling me 73 times that night. I didn't answer once. My parents kept telling me we needed to talk this through as a family, and that these things happen. These things happen? My sister seduced my fiancé and got pregnant, and these things just happen? The worst part? Within 2 weeks, my parents had completely switched sides. Suddenly, it was all about supporting my sister through her pregnancy. She was the victim somehow. Young, scared, vulnerable. Never mind that I was the one who'd been betrayed. Never mind that she'd destroyed my entire life without a second thought. And here's the part that still makes me physically ill. They used my wedding plans. All of them. The same venue I'd booked and paid deposits for. The same florist. The same caterer. My mother actually called me and asked if I'd mind if my sister used them since everything was already arranged and it would be such a waste to cancel. I minded. I minded so much I couldn't breathe. But they did it anyway. 2 months after my wedding was supposed to happen, my sister walked down the aisle in a white dress, pregnant with my ex-fiance's child, at the venue I'd chosen, with the flowers I'd picked out, eating the menu I'd selected. Only 3 people from my extended family refused to attend. My aunt on my father's side, my cousin, and my grandmother. Everyone else went, smiled, congratulated the happy couple, posted photos on social media like this was normal and beautiful and not the most grotesque betrayal imaginable. I spent that day in my apartment, alone, drinking wine and looking at the wedding dress still hanging in my closet. The dress I was supposed to wear. The life I was supposed to have. My parents kept calling, kept trying to get me to move past this and be happy for them. Move past it? They'd stolen everything from me and expected me to just swallow it and smile. My mother actually said, and I'll never forget this, that I was being selfish for making my sister's pregnancy about me. That's when I realized the truth. My family didn't just enable what happened, they endorsed it. They chose her. They chose the person who betrayed me over the person who'd been betrayed. So I made a choice too. I cut them off, stopped answering calls, blocked them on social media, moved to a different part of the city. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone. And somehow, that felt better than being part of a family that could do this to me. But this isn't a story about how I stayed broken. This is a story about what happened next. And trust me, it gets so much worse before it gets better. The next 3 years were brutal. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I spent the first 6 months in therapy twice a week, trying to unpack how my entire family could betray me like that. My therapist kept asking if I wanted to work toward forgiveness. I kept telling her I wanted to work toward not thinking about them every single day. I threw myself into work, got promoted twice, started traveling for business, made new friends who didn't know my history and didn't ask questions when I said I wasn't close with my family. I built a completely new life, brick by brick, and it was exhausting but necessary. Around the 2-year mark, or why, something shifted. I woke up one morning and realized I'd gone an entire week without thinking about my sister or my ex-fiance. It felt like finally being able to breathe after being underwater. That's when I met him. His name was Owen, and we met at a conference in Seattle. He was there representing his company. He'd started his own consulting firm 5 years earlier and had built it into something impressive. We ended up sitting next to each other at a networking dinner, and he made me laugh. Actually laugh, not that polite social laugh, but the kind that comes from somewhere genuine. We talked for 4 hours that night. About work, about travel, about everything except families. When he asked for my number, I almost said no. I wasn't ready. But something in his eyes made me change my mind. We dated long distance for 8 months before he asked me to move in with him. I was terrified. The last time I'd trusted someone completely, it had destroyed me. But Owen was patient. He never pushed. He let me set the pace for everything. When I finally told him about what happened with my family, we were sitting on his balcony at 2 in the morning. I'd been avoiding it for months, but he deserved to know why I flinched every time he mentioned his own sister, why I changed the subject whenever family came up. I expected him to be shocked or uncomfortable. Instead, he just held my hand and said, "That explains so much about your strength. You rebuilt yourself from nothing. That's extraordinary." He proposed 10 months after we met. No pressure, no expectations, just a simple question on a random Tuesday night while we were cooking dinner together. Of course, I said yes. We planned everything ourselves. No family input, no drama, no traditions we didn't choose. We got married in Italy, just the 2 of us and 12 close friends. It was small and perfect, and entirely ours. I wore a dress I picked out alone. We wrote our own vows. I cried during the ceremony, but they were happy tears. I sent my parents an invitation, not because I wanted them there, but because I wanted them to see that I'd moved on, that I'd built something beautiful without them. They didn't come. My mother called 2 days before the wedding and said they couldn't abandon my sister during such a difficult time. Apparently her marriage was already struggling, and she needed their support. I hung up before she finished talking. Owen asked if I was okay. I told him I was better than okay. I was free. But life has a way of testing you right when you think you've got it figured out. We started trying for kids about 6 months after the wedding. I was 31. Owen was 35, and we were both ready. Month after month, nothing happened. After a year of trying, we went to see a specialist. That's when we found out I had fertility issues. Nothing catastrophic, nothing that meant we couldn't have kids, but it wasn't going to be easy. The doctor recommended treatments, monitoring, interventions. It would be expensive and exhausting and emotionally draining. Owen squeezed my hand during that appointment and told the doctor we'd do whatever it took. We started the treatments. Injections, appointments, tests. Hope followed by disappointment, followed by more hope. It was brutal in a completely different way than what I'd been through before. This wasn't about betrayal. It was about wanting something so desperately and having no control over whether you'd get it. During one of the harder months after another negative test, I broke down. I told Owen maybe this was punishment for cutting off my family. Maybe I didn't deserve to be a mother. Maybe I was too damaged. He looked at me with more intensity than I'd ever seen and said, "Don't you dare let them take this from you too. Don't give them that power. This isn't about them. This is about us." He was right. This was our life, our journey, and we were going to fight for it together. What I didn't know then was that my old life was about to come crashing back in the worst possible way. The phone call came on a Sunday afternoon, 4 years after I'd cut them off. My father. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. He sounded older, tired. He asked if we could talk, really talk, about trying to repair the family. He said it had been long enough, that life was too short for this kind of division, that my mother missed me terribly. I wanted to hang up, but Owen was watching me, and I could see in his face that he thought I should at least hear them out. Not for them, for me. So I wouldn't always wonder what if. That's how I ended up agreeing to a dinner. Neutral location, both families present. My parents, my sister, and her husband, yes, they'd actually gotten married, and Owen and me. The restaurant was expensive and quiet, the kind of place where people don't make scenes. I was so naive thinking that would protect us. My sister showed up with her 2 kids, a boy who just turned 4 and a girl who was 2. Both of them looked exactly like my ex-fiance, which was like being stabbed every time I glanced at them. The boy had his eyes. The girl had his smile. I felt physically ill. She looked different. Tired. There were dark circles under her eyes and she'd gained weight. Her husband, I still can't call him my ex-fiancé without wanting to break something. Looked uncomfortable from the moment they sat down. He couldn't meet my eyes. Kept staring at his plate like it might save him. My parents tried to keep things light at first, asking about Owen's business, complimenting my hair. Small talk that felt like walking on broken glass. My sister stayed quiet, managing her kids who were surprisingly well-behaved. Then dessert arrived and everything went to hell. My mother asked, in that careful tone people use when they're pretending something isn't loaded, if Owen and I were planning to have children soon. Before I could answer, my sister laughed. Actually laughed. "Good luck with that," she said, cutting her son's cake. "I heard you were having trouble. That must be so hard, wanting something you can't have." The table went silent. Owen's hand found mine under the table, squeezing so hard it hurt. "Excuse me?" I managed to get out. She looked up, feigning innocence. "What? I'm just saying it must be difficult, especially at your age. I mean, I got pregnant the first time just thinking about it. All 3 times, actually." "3 times? You're pregnant again?" my mother gasped. Delighted. My sister smiled, placing her hand on her still flat stomach. 12 weeks. We were going to announce it later, but yes. Another boy. We're so blessed. I felt like I was going to be sick. Owen's jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. "That's wonderful news," my father said, shooting me a look that clearly meant I should say something supportive. I couldn't. I literally couldn't form words. My sister wasn't done. She turned to Owen. "You must be so patient. I mean, if my husband couldn't give me children, I don't know what I'd do. But I guess when you really love someone, you stick it out, right?" It was the way she looked at him when she said it. The slight smile. The implication. Owen stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "We're leaving." "Oh, come on," my sister said. "I was just making conversation. Don't be so sensitive." My mother reached for my arm. "Please, let's not ruin the evening. Your sister didn't mean anything by it. You know how she is. She just speaks without thinking sometimes." That same excuse they'd been making for her my entire life. Something inside me snapped. I didn't sit back down. I stood there looking at my sister, really looking at her for the first time in years, and saw exactly what she was. Not my family. Not someone who'd made a mistake. A person who'd deliberately destroyed my life and felt absolutely nothing about it. "You want to talk about sensitivity?" I said quietly. Too quietly. "Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you seduced my fiancé 6 months before my wedding. Let's talk about how you got pregnant and announced it like you'd won some prize. Let's talk about how you stole my wedding, my venue, my plans, everything. And nobody in this family said a single word to stop you." "Lindsay," my father warned. "No. I'm done being quiet. I'm done being the reasonable one. I'm done pretending any of this is okay." I turned to my parents. "You chose her. The moment she announced that pregnancy, you chose her. You didn't ask if I was okay. You didn't defend me. You just decided I should get over it and move on because it was easier than holding her accountable." My mother had tears in her eyes. "We were trying to keep the family together. By sacrificing me? By using my wedding plans for her? By expecting me to just swallow it and smile?" I laughed, but it came out harsh. "You didn't keep the family together. You cut me out and pretended that was the same thing." My sister rolled her eyes. "God, are you still on about that? It's been years. Get over it." "Get over it?" I repeated. "You destroyed my life. You betrayed me in the worst way possible. And you've never once apologized. Not once. Because I'm not sorry," she said simply. Her husband tried to grab her arm, but she shook him off. "You want to know the truth? He was never really yours. If he was, he wouldn't have come to me. Men don't cheat unless they're not getting what they need at home." Owen moved to stand next to me, his presence solid and grounding. "We're done here." But my sister wasn't finished. She looked Owen up and down in a way that made my skin crawl. "You know, if you ever get tired of waiting around for damaged goods, you know where to find me. I'm clearly very fertile." The table erupted. My father stood up, my mother gasped. Owen's face went dark with rage. But before anyone else could speak, I laughed. Really laughed, the kind that comes from somewhere bottomless. "You think that was flirting?" I said to my sister. "You think that makes you desirable? You're pathetic. You stole my fiancé because you couldn't stand that I had something you didn't. And now you're sitting here, pregnant with your 3rd child, in a marriage that's clearly falling apart, trying to seduce my husband because you still can't stand that I'm happy." Her husband was staring at her in horror. "Good. Let him see who he'd really married. You want to talk about damaged goods?" I continued. "Look in the mirror. You're 27 years old, stuck with a man who barely looks at you, raising kids in a family that's built on betrayal. Your own son is going to grow up knowing his father cheated on his aunt to be with his mother. That's going to be his origin story. Good luck explaining that. That's enough, my father said. But his voice had no force behind it. I turned to him. You're right. It is enough. I'm done. I came here tonight because you asked me to. Because some small part of me hoped you'd finally take responsibility for what you enabled. But nothing's changed. She's still the same manipulative person she was 4 years ago, and you're still making excuses for her. I looked at her husband, that man I'd once thought I'd spend my life with. He was staring at his plate, red-faced and silent. And you don't even have the courage to speak. You've been sitting there all night like a scolded child, not defending your wife, not defending yourself, not doing anything. You're exactly the coward I always suspected you were. He opened his mouth, maybe to apologize, maybe to defend himself. I held up my hand. Save it. Whatever you were going to say, I don't care. You're irrelevant. You were irrelevant the moment I left that apartment 4 years ago. You're just a bad memory, and you don't get to be anything more than that. I grabbed my purse. Owen was already standing, ready to leave with me. This family is dead to me, I said, looking at each of them in turn. Not because of the betrayal. I could have eventually forgiven that. But because none of you thought I deserved better. None of you stood up for me. And even now, even tonight, you're still choosing her. My mother was crying. Please don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did this years ago. I'm just finally accepting it. We walked out of that restaurant and I didn't look back. Owen drove us home in silence. When we got to our apartment, I broke down. Not because I was sad, because I was free. Finally, completely free. But freedom, I'd learn, comes with its own complicated price. 2 weeks after that disaster of a dinner, I was still processing everything. Owen kept telling me I'd done the right thing, that standing up for myself was healthy, that cutting them off permanently was justified. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd replay the whole evening and feel this toxic mixture of vindication and rage. I needed to talk about it. But I'd already exhausted Owen's patience with the topic, and my therapist couldn't see me for another week. So I did what thousands of people do when they need to vent. I went online. I found this support group for people dealing with family estrangement. It was anonymous, just usernames and stories. Everyone there had some variation of family trauma. I read through dozens of posts about narcissistic parents, abusive siblings, toxic relatives who'd done unforgivable things. It was oddly comforting, knowing I wasn't alone. So I posted. I wrote out the entire story. The betrayal, the wedding, the 4 years of silence, the dinner, everything. I was careful. I didn't use names, didn't mention the specific city, kept details vague enough that it could have been anyone's story. It was just supposed to be a vent, a way to get it out of my system. The support was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from people telling me I'd done the right thing, that my family was toxic, that I deserved better. It felt good, really good. Like validation I hadn't realized I desperately needed. I checked the post obsessively for days. Every new comment fed something in me I didn't want to examine too closely. 3 weeks later, my aunt called me, the one who'd refused to go to my sister's wedding. Lindsay, she said carefully, I need to ask you something. Did you post about your sister online? My blood went cold. What? There's a story going around town about a woman who got pregnant with her sister's fiance and stole her wedding. Everyone's talking about it. The details are too specific. It has to be about your family. I felt like I might throw up. I posted in an anonymous support group. I didn't use any names. How would anyone? Someone must have recognized enough details and started connecting dots. You know how people are. They piece things together and suddenly it's all over social media. Group chats everywhere. It's gotten back to your sister. Good, I said before I could stop myself. My aunt was quiet for a long moment. Lindsay, I understand you're angry. God knows you have every right to be. But this is going to have consequences. She was right. The consequences started rolling in fast. My sister lost her job first. She'd been working at a local medical office, and apparently the story had spread through her workplace like wildfire. Her boss called her in, said something about maintaining professional reputation and not being a good fit for their family-oriented practice. She was let go within a week. Then the social consequences hit. People started recognizing her at the grocery store, at her kids' school, around town. She'd gone from anonymous to notorious. Her husband's family stopped speaking to them. Some of their couple friends suddenly got very busy whenever they tried to make plans. I heard all of this through my aunt, who heard it through the family grapevine, and I listened. I listened to every detail with this dark satisfaction that scared me. They're talking about moving, my aunt told me during one call. Your sister can't show her face anywhere without people whispering. Someone actually approached her at the pharmacy and told her she should be ashamed of herself. I should have felt bad. I should have felt guilty that my anonymous post had spiraled into public humiliation, but I didn't. Not really. She is ashamed of herself, I said. She should be. Lindsay. No, don't. She destroyed my life and felt nothing. Now people know what kind of person she is. That's not my fault. That's just truth catching up. But even as I said it, something felt off, wrong. I'd wanted her to face consequences, yes. But watching it happen, hearing about her losing everything, seeing her life fall apart the way mine had, it didn't feel as good as I thought it would. Owen found me one night scrolling through social media, looking for mentions of the story, searching my sister's name to see what people were saying about her. What are you doing? He asked gently. Just looking. You've been looking for hours. He sat down next to me. This isn't healthy. She's losing everything, I said, still staring at the screen. Her job, her friends, her reputation, everything. And how does that make you feel? I didn't answer. Because the truth was complicated. I felt satisfied. I felt vindicated. But I also felt something darker. Something that made me uncomfortable with myself. I felt powerful in a way that didn't sit right. I didn't name her, I said finally. I didn't do this to her. This is just consequences of her own actions. Owen took the phone from my hands. Maybe. But you're spending every free moment watching those consequences unfold. That's not moving on. That's obsession. He was right. I knew he was right. But I couldn't stop. My sister tried to sue me. That's how desperate things got for her. She hired a lawyer and filed a defamation lawsuit, claiming I'd posted lies about her online that had destroyed her reputation and caused her to lose her job. The lawyer sent an official letter to my address. Somehow she'd tracked down where I lived, which was creepy in itself. Owen and I consulted with an attorney. He read through everything, looked at my anonymous post, and basically laughed. She has no case, he said. First, you never named her. Second, truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Third, she'd have to prove that your post directly caused her specific damages, which is nearly impossible when it was anonymous and the spread was organic. The lawsuit never even made it past preliminary filing. The judge threw it out. Not enough evidence, no direct connection, case dismissed. When my aunt told me, I felt this rush of triumph. She'd tried to come after me legally and failed. It was another loss for her, another win for me. But that same week, something else happened. Something that should have been purely joyful. I got pregnant. After 2 years of treatments, failed attempts, hormones, disappointments, finally 2 lines on a test. I stared at it in the bathroom for 10 minutes straight, crying, unable to believe it was real. When I showed Owen, he picked me up and spun me around, and we both cried together. This was everything we'd wanted, everything we'd fought for. We were going to have a baby. I should have been the happiest person alive. Instead, I found myself obsessively checking social media for updates about my sister. It became a compulsion. Every morning, every night, sometimes multiple times during the day. I'd search for her name, look at her profiles, scroll through comments and gossip pages. I needed to know what was happening to her. If things were getting worse, if she was suffering enough. Owen noticed. Of course he noticed. 3 weeks after we found out about the pregnancy, he came home from work and found me on my laptop, deep in some discussion thread about my sister. Again. He closed the laptop. Not aggressively, but firmly. We need to talk. I knew that tone. About what? About the fact that you're pregnant with our child, and you're spending more time obsessing over your sister than celebrating this miracle we've been given. I'm not obsessing. Yes, you are. You check her social media every day. Multiple times a day. You're in these gossip groups, reading every comment, tracking every consequence. You're consumed by watching her life fall apart. She deserves it, I said defensively. Maybe, probably, but that's not the point. He sat down next to me. The point is that she's still controlling your life. You cut her off 4 years ago, but she's more present now than ever because you can't stop watching her destruction. That's not fair, isn't it? He took my hand. Lindsay, you're pregnant. We're having a baby. This is supposed to be the happiest time of our lives. But every time I look at you, you're on your phone or your laptop monitoring her. She's stealing this joy from you, and you're letting her. I wanted to argue, but tears were streaming down my face because I knew he was right. I just need to know she's facing consequences, I whispered. After everything she did, I need to know she's suffering the way I suffered. And then what? What happens after she's suffered enough? Will that fix what she took from you? Will that give you back those 4 years? Will that make you happy? I couldn't answer. He pulled me into his arms. You're pregnant with our son, Lindsay, and I'm terrified that when he's born, you're going to be so busy watching her that you'll miss being present for him. That hit me like ice water. The thought of holding my baby while secretly checking my phone to see if my sister was still suffering, it made me feel sick. I don't know how to stop, I admitted. I know, but you have to try. Because this obsession, it's not justice. It's not healing. It's just another form of letting her control you. That night, I lay awake thinking about what he said. I thought about my sister losing her job, being gossiped about, struggling. And I thought about the satisfaction I'd felt hearing about it. That dark, ugly satisfaction that was eating away at the person I wanted to be. I'd spent 4 years building a new life. I'd found love, gotten married, was finally pregnant. I had everything I'd ever wanted, but I couldn't enjoy any of it because I was too busy making sure she was miserable. Owen was right. She was still controlling me, just in a different way. But knowing something and changing it are two very different things. 3 years passed. 3 years of sleepless nights and first words and tiny shoes and everything that comes with being a mother. My son was born healthy, 8 pounds. Dark hair, Owen's eyes, and he was perfect. Absolutely perfect. I'd gotten better. Not completely. I still occasionally found myself wondering about my sister, still had moments where I wanted to check on her downfall. But Owen's words had stuck with me. I focused on my baby, on my marriage, on building this new chapter of my life. I thought I'd moved past it. I really did. Then I saw him. I was at the grocery store with my son in the cart. He was 3 now, chattering away about everything he saw. When I turned down an aisle and froze. My nephew. The 4-year-old boy I'd seen at that disastrous dinner years ago. He was older now, obviously around 7. He was with my mother, who looked like she'd aged a decade. I should have left, should have turned around and gone a different direction. But I stood there, hidden partially by a display, watching them. My mother was buying generic brands of everything, the cheapest options. Her cart was full of basics, nothing extra. My nephew looked thin, not dangerously so, but like he wasn't getting enough. His clothes were worn but clean. They didn't see me. I made sure of it. But I watched my mother counting change at the register. Watched my nephew ask for candy and her having to say no. Watched them leave with their meager groceries. I shouldn't have done what I did next. But I couldn't help myself. I called my aunt that evening after my son went to bed. How bad is it? I asked without preamble. She knew immediately what I meant. She sighed. Bad. Your sister's husband left her about 6 months ago. Finally had enough, I guess. He has the kids on weekends but pays minimal support. She's living with your parents with all 3 children. She can't find work anywhere. Her reputation is too damaged in this town. What's she doing for money? My aunt was quiet for a long moment. You don't want to know. Tell me. She's been trying to sell content online. Pictures. That kind of content, it's not going well. I felt sick. Not satisfied. Sick. That kind of content? I'm not going to spell it out, Lindsay. But yes, she's desperate. Your parents are supporting 4 people on their retirement income. It's not enough. She's doing what she thinks she has to do. I ended the call feeling hollow. This wasn't satisfaction. This was watching someone spiral into something dark and desperate, and knowing, on some level, that I'd contributed to pushing her there. 2 weeks later, my aunt called again. Her voice was shaky. It leaked, she said. Someone from town found her content and recognized her. It's spreading everywhere. The photos are on gossip sites, being shared in local groups. Everyone's seen them. I thought I'd feel triumphant. This was ultimate humiliation, exactly what part of me had wanted. But instead, I felt nothing, just empty. Her kids! My aunt continued, her voice cracking. They're being bullied. Kids at school found the photos somehow. They're showing them to other kids, mocking them. That's when it stopped being abstract. I saw him again a few days later. Same grocery store, same time of day. But this time, my nephew was crying. Really crying. The kind of desperate sobs that come from deep hurt. My mother was trying to calm him down in the parking lot, but he was inconsolable. A group of kids his age were pointing and laughing from across the lot. That's him. His mom is the one in those pictures. I stood by my car, my own son oblivious in his seat, and watched my nephew fall apart. Watched him scream at those kids. Watched my mother trying to shield him. watched the other parents pull their children away while shooting disgusted looks at my mother. My son said something from his car seat, but I couldn't process it. I was locked on that scene, on a 7-year-old boy whose life was being destroyed because of his mother's choices, because of desperation, because of a chain of consequences that led back, in some way, to me. The kids eventually left. My mother got my nephew into the car. I could still hear his crying from across the parking lot. I got in my car and drove home on autopilot. When Owen came home that evening, I told him what I'd seen. "That child did nothing wrong," I said, my voice shaking. "He's 7 years old, and his classmates have seen explicit photos of his mother. He's going to carry that for the rest of his life. That's not your fault," Owen said carefully. "Isn't it? I posted that story. I set this in motion. She made her choices. All of them. But her son didn't. He didn't choose any of this." I looked at our sleeping child. If something like that happened to our son, I'd want to die. I'd want to burn the world down to protect him. Owen pulled me close. "You're not responsible for her choices or their consequences. Maybe not legally. Maybe not directly. But that night, I couldn't shake the image of that little boy crying in a parking lot because of something I'd helped unleash. The nightmares started about a week after I saw my nephew crying in that parking lot. In them, I was the villain. Not my sister. Me. I'd watch myself from outside my body, smiling as I destroyed someone's life. Sometimes it was my sister. Sometimes it was her children. Sometimes it was strangers whose faces morphed into people I loved. I'd wake up gasping, covered in sweat, unable to shake the feeling that the dream version of me was more honest than the waking one. Owen would hold me when I woke up like that, but he stopped asking what the nightmares were about. I think he knew. I think we both knew I was processing something I didn't want to face. Then one afternoon, my son asked me a question that broke something inside me. We were coloring together at the kitchen table. He was 3.5, at that age where they pick up everything and ask about everything. He'd been unusually quiet, concentrating on staying inside the lines of his drawing. "Mommy," he said without looking up, "what's an ant?" My hand froze mid-stroke. "What?" "An ant. Grandma said something about an ant when we were at her house last week. She was talking to Grandpa." "What is it?" "My mother-in-law. She must have been discussing something with Owen's father." My son had overheard. "It's your mom or dad's sister," I said carefully. "Do I have one?" I should have told him the truth. I should have said yes, that he had an aunt he'd never met, that it was complicated, that maybe someday I'd explain. But I didn't. "No," I said. "You don't have an aunt." He nodded, accepting this completely, and went back to coloring. But I sat there feeling like the worst person alive. I just lied to my child, lied about something fundamental about our family. And the worst part was how easily the lie had come out. That night, after my son was asleep, I broke down. Owen found me crying in the bathroom. "I told him I don't have a sister," I said. He asked about aunts and I lied to him. I looked my son in the face and lied. Owen was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You're becoming what you hate." I looked up at him, shocked. "I've watched you for 3 years," he continued, his voice gentle but firm. "I've watched you monitor her destruction, feel satisfaction at her suffering, convince yourself it's all justified because of what she did to you. And now you're lying to our son to maintain this narrative where she doesn't exist. You're not healing, Lindsay. You're becoming bitter. You're becoming just as toxic as she was. That's not fair. Isn't it? She hurt you, yes, terribly. But you've spent years hurting her back, even if it was indirect. And now that pain is starting to affect our son. When does it stop? When does the revenge end and the healing begin?" I wanted to argue, but everything he said was true, and we both knew it. "I don't know how to let it go," I whispered. "I know, but you have to try. Because if you don't, you're going to pass this hatred down to our son. He's going to grow up learning that family betrayal is unforgivable, that revenge is justified, that lying is acceptable if it protects the narrative you want to maintain." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Late. Too late for a normal call. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was my father. "Lindsay," he said, and his voice was wrecked. "It's your mother. She's been diagnosed with cancer, pancreatic, stage 4. The world tilted. "What?" "They give her less than a year. Maybe 6 months. She wanted me to call you. She wants to see you." I couldn't speak. Couldn't think. "Cancer. Terminal. 6 months. I know you're angry," my father continued. "I know we don't have a relationship anymore, but she's your mother. She's dying, please. I hung up without answering, stood there holding the phone, trying to process what I'd just heard. Owen was watching me. What happened? My mother has cancer. Terminal. Less than a year. He pulled me into his arms. I didn't cry. I just stood there, numb, thinking about all the years of silence, all the years of anger, all the bridges I'd burned and convinced myself I was fine with. What am I supposed to do? I asked. I don't know, Owen said honestly. But whatever you decide, you have to live with it. If you don't see her and she dies, you can't take that back. And if you do see her, you have to be prepared for what that might mean. I thought about my son's question, about my lie, about my nephew crying in a parking lot, about years of obsession and revenge disguised as justice. I've become someone I don't recognize, I said quietly. Then change, Owen said simply. It's not too late, but it has to start now. That night I lay awake thinking about my mother dying, about my sister struggling, about consequences and choices, and the difference between justice and cruelty, about whether it was possible to heal from betrayal without becoming exactly what you hate. I didn't have answers. But for the first time in years, I was asking the right questions. My father called again 3 days later. I'd been avoiding thinking about the first call, pushing it down, pretending I had more time to decide what to do. We need to talk, he said. Your mother wants to make a request. I met him at a coffee shop. Neutral territory. He looked older than I remembered. Thinner, grayer, worn down by the weight of everything that had happened to our family. She has about 6 months, he said without preamble. The doctors were clear. It's aggressive. There's no treatment that will make a difference at this stage. I stirred my coffee, not drinking it, just needing something to do with my hands. She doesn't want you to forgive your sister, he continued. She knows that's not something she can ask, but she has one request. When the time comes, when she passes, she wants you both there, at the funeral. She doesn't want to be buried with her daughters still at war. That's not fair, I said immediately. I know. She's asking me to stand next to the person who destroyed my life, to pretend we're a family, to perform grief while the person who betrayed me is there doing the same thing. She's not asking for a performance. She's not asking you to reconcile. She's asking for 2 hours of your life where you're in the same room for her sake. That's all. I laughed bitterly. That's all? Dad, you have no idea what you're asking. I do, he said quietly. I know what she did. I know we handled it wrong. I know we chose her when we should have supported you both differently. I know all of it. But this isn't about rewriting history. It's about giving your mother peace before she dies. What about my peace? When do I get that? He didn't have an answer for that. That night, Owen and I had the longest conversation we'd had in months. I told him about my father's request, about the funeral, about the impossible position I was in. If you don't go, you'll regret it, Owen said. Not because of them, because of you. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you made the right choice. And if I do go, if I stand there next to her and have to watch her cry and pretend to be the grieving daughter, then you'll know you did everything you could. You'll know you gave your mother what she asked for in her final days. I hate this, I said. I hate that she's putting this on me, that I have to choose between my own pain and her peace. I know, but that's the choice, and only you can make it. The next day, I did something I should have done years ago. I made an appointment with a therapist, not the one I'd seen after the initial betrayal. A new one, someone who could help me process this fresh hell. Her office was calm. Neutral colors, soft lighting, a box of tissues strategically placed. I told her everything. The betrayal, the wedding, the years of silence, the dinner, the post that leaked, my sister's downfall, my nephew crying, the nightmares, the lie to my son, and now this impossible request. She listened without judgment, taking occasional notes. What do you want? She asked when I finished. I don't know. That's not true. You might not want to admit it, but somewhere inside you know what you want. I was quiet for a long time. I want it to stop hurting. I want to be able to think about my family without feeling this rage. I want my son to grow up without inheriting this darkness. I want to be free of her, of all of them. And you think seeing your mother before she dies will give you that? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe it'll just hurt more. There's no right answer here, the therapist said gently. But consider this. What will haunt you more? Going and risking pain? Or not going and living with that question forever? That night, I sat down and wrote a letter to my sister. I don't know why. I wasn't planning to send it. but I needed to get the words out. I wrote about the betrayal, about how it had destroyed me, about the years of anger and obsession, about watching her life fall apart and feeling satisfied, then feeling sick about that satisfaction, about seeing her son crying and realizing that revenge doesn't heal anything. It just creates more pain. I wrote that I didn't forgive her, that I might never forgive her, but that I was tired of hating her, tired of watching her suffer, tired of letting what she did control my entire existence. I sealed the letter and put it in my desk drawer. I didn't know if I'd ever send it, but writing it felt like something. 3 days later, I called my father. "I'll see her," I said. "Mom, I'll visit her in the hospital, but I'm doing it for me, not for you or for her or for some fantasy of family reunion. I'm doing it because I need to know I did everything I could before it's too late." "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm not promising anything beyond that visit. I'm not promising I'll come to the funeral. I'm not promising I'll ever speak to you or my sister again after this. I'm just promising this one visit. That's all we're asking." But we both knew that wasn't true. This one visit would lead to more requests, more pressure, more complicated emotions. But I'd deal with that when it came. For now, I was taking one step. Just one. Not for them. For me. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and desperation. I'd been in hospitals before, for my son's birth, for routine appointments. But this felt different, heavier. Like the building itself knew why people came here and mourned with them. I was supposed to meet my father in the lobby at 2 o'clock. He'd take me to my mother's room. Controlled visit, limited time, no drama. That was the plan. But plans never work out the way you think they will. I got there early, anxious and unable to wait at home any longer. Owen had offered to come with me, but I needed to do this alone. I sat in the waiting area, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, trying not to think about what I'd say to my mother. Then I heard a child's voice. "Grandpa, I'm scared." I looked up. My nephew. The 7-year-old I'd seen crying in that parking lot. He was sitting across the waiting room with my father, wearing clothes that looked too big for him, his face drawn and pale. Next to him was my sister. We saw each other at the same moment. Her eyes widened. Mine probably did too. Neither of us had expected this. My father looked between us, clearly panicking about the accidental encounter. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. We just stared at each other across a hospital waiting room, years of pain and anger and betrayal hanging in the air between us. My sister looked terrible. Not in a petty, satisfying way, in a genuinely concerning way. She'd lost weight. Her hair was pulled back messily. There were dark circles under her eyes so pronounced they looked like bruises. She looked defeated, broken. Her other 2 children weren't there, probably with their father for the weekend. Just her oldest son, the one born from my betrayal, sitting there terrified about his dying grandmother. And then he looked at me, really looked at me. I saw the recognition in his eyes, the way children process new information by examining faces. "Dad," he said quietly, tugging on my father's sleeve. "Who is that lady?" My father's face went pale. "You're my aunt," the boy said suddenly, his eyes going wide. "Aren't you? You look like Mom, and Grandpa talks about 2 daughters sometimes." The waiting room went silent. My sister had tears streaming down her face. My father looked like he wanted to disappear. And I stood there, frozen, staring at this child who'd just realized he had an aunt he'd never known about. "Yes," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm your aunt. Why haven't I met you before?" It was such a simple question, such an innocent question, and there was no good answer. "It's complicated," I managed. "Did you and Mom have a fight?" My sister made a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. She stood up abruptly. I need some air." She practically ran toward the hallway, her shoulders shaking. My father started to go after her but stopped, looking torn between his daughter and his grandson. The boy looked confused and scared. "Did I say something wrong?" "No," I said quickly. "No, you didn't say anything wrong. I should have left, should have walked away. But I found myself sitting down next to him instead. Your grandma is very sick," I said gently. "That's scary for everyone. Your mom is upset about that. Not about you. Is she going to die?" The bluntness of children. "Yes," I said honestly. "Probably soon." He was quiet, processing this. Then, "Are you upset too?" "Yes, very upset. Even though you and Mom had a fight?" "Even though." He nodded like this made sense in his child's logic. "Sometimes I fight with my brother, but I still love him. The simplicity of it. The innocence. He had no idea about the magnitude of what had happened between his mother and me. To him, it was just a fight between sisters that had gone on too long. That's very wise, I said. My sister came back then. She'd wiped her face, but her eyes were red and swollen. She saw me sitting with her son and stopped, like she wasn't sure if she should intervene. Mom, the boy said, this is my aunt. Her name is... He looked at me, realizing he didn't know. Lindsay, I said. Lindsay, he repeated. That's a nice name. My sister and I locked eyes. For the first time in 7 years, we really looked at each other, not with anger, not with hatred, just with the weight of everything we'd done to each other, everything we'd lost, everything we'd destroyed. She looked like she wanted to say something. I probably did too, but neither of us spoke. My father cleared his throat. Your mother is asking for you, both of you. Both. Of course. This had been the plan all along, hadn't it? Get us both here, force us into the same space. My sister picked up her purse. Come on, she said to her son, then to me. You go first, I'll wait. No, I heard myself say. We'll go together. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was just exhaustion. Exhaustion with the fighting, with the hatred, with carrying this weight. We walked down that hospital corridor side by side, not speaking, not looking at each other, but together. And behind us, my nephew held my father's hand and asked if Grandma would want to know he'd met his aunt today. I didn't have an answer for that. I didn't have answers for anything anymore. My mother died 2 months later. Peacefully, they said, though I'm not sure what peaceful means when you're dying of cancer. I'd visited her 3 more times in those 2 months. We'd talked about small things, my son, the weather, memories from when I was young. We never talked about the betrayal. We never talked about my sister. We just existed in the same space, and maybe that was enough. The funeral was exactly what you'd expect. A church service, a eulogy my father delivered that made everyone cry. Hymns, flowers, people I hadn't seen in years offering condolences and carefully not mentioning the family drama they definitely knew about. My sister sat on the opposite side of the church with her 3 children. We'd made eye contact once when I arrived. She'd nodded. I'd nodded back. That was it. Owen stayed close to me throughout the service, one hand always on my back or holding mine. My son was too young to really understand what was happening, but he was quiet and well-behaved, sensing the weight of the occasion. At the cemetery, we stood on opposite sides of the grave as they lowered the casket. My father stood between us, physically and metaphorically trying to bridge a gap that seemed impossible. People filed past, dropping flowers, saying final goodbyes. Eventually, everyone left. My father took my nephew and the other kids back to the car. They needed to use the bathroom, needed snacks, needed a break from grief. Owen took my son to look at other headstones, giving me space. And suddenly, it was just me and my sister, standing on opposite sides of our mother's grave. The silence stretched. I thought about walking away. This didn't have to happen. We could maintain our distance, even in death. But then she spoke. I destroyed everything. Her voice was barely audible. I know that. I've known it for years. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I looked at her across that fresh grave. Really looked at her. She was 30 years old, but looked 40. Life had been brutal to her in ways that showed. I became you, I said, surprising myself. Trying to destroy you. I became exactly what I hated. She looked up, confused. That post, I continued. The one that leaked. I did that. I knew what would happen. Maybe not the specific details, but I knew it would hurt you. I wanted it to hurt you. I deserved it. Maybe. But here's the thing. I knew about the photos. When they leaked. I found out before most people. I could have warned you. Could have tried to help you take them down before they spread too far. But I didn't. I made a choice to let it happen. To let you suffer. She was crying now. Silent tears streaming down her face. I watched you lose everything, I said. Your job, your reputation, your marriage. And I felt satisfied. I told myself it was justice, but it wasn't. It was revenge. And the worst part is... My own voice broke. The worst part is I didn't care who else got hurt. Your kids. Your son. I saw him crying in that parking lot because other kids had seen those photos of you, and even then, part of me thought you deserved it. I did deserve it, she whispered. But you're right. My son didn't. None of my kids deserved to suffer because of my mistakes. We stood there, both crying now, on opposite sides of our mother's grave. I can't forgive you, I said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did, it changed me. It broke something in me that I don't know if I can fix. I know, but I can't keep doing this. This hatred, this obsession with your destruction, it's poisoning me. It's affecting my marriage, my son, my entire life. I've become someone I don't recognize. Someone cruel. She wiped her face. I'm sorry. I've been sorry for years, but I didn't know how to say it. Didn't think I had the right to say it. I destroyed your life because I was jealous and selfish and stupid. And I've spent every day since then paying for it. Your kids shouldn't have to pay for it too. No, they shouldn't, but they are. My oldest knows the story now. Kids at school made sure of that. He knows his father was engaged to you. He knows I'm the reason you don't talk to us. He's 7 years old and he carries that shame. I thought about my own son, about the lie I'd told him, about the legacy of pain we were passing down. I pulled the letter from my purse, the one I'd written months ago. I'd been carrying it since then, not sure what to do with it. This is for you, I said, walking around the grave to hand it to her. I don't know if it'll help. It's not forgiveness. It's not reconciliation. It's just acknowledgement of what happened, of what we both did to each other, of where we are now. She took it with shaking hands. Can I read it? Not now. Later, when you're alone. She nodded, holding the letter like it was something fragile. Thank you for being here today, for talking to me. I know how hard this must be. It is hard. It's the hardest thing I've done in years, but it's necessary. Will I see you again? After today? I didn't know how to answer that. I don't know. I need time. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not consumed by anger at you. That's fair. She paused. Your son is beautiful. I saw him at the service. He looks like you. Thank you. Your kids. They seem good. Resilient. They're surviving. That's about all I can manage right now. We stood there awkwardly, not sure how to end this conversation. Not sure what came next. I should go, I said finally. Owen's waiting. My son will be getting restless. Of course. Lindsay. She stopped, swallowed. Thank you. For the letter. For today. For not hating me quite as much as you should. I do hate you, I said honestly. But I'm trying not to let it define me anymore. I walked away then, back to Owen and my son. Back to my life. As I walked, I heard her crying again. Alone at our mother's grave, holding a letter that contained years of pain distilled into a few pages. It wasn't healing. It wasn't closure. But it was a first step toward something. Toward not being enemies, even if we'd never be sisters again. 3 years have passed since my mother's funeral. 3 years of carefully maintained distance. Of healing that happens so slowly you barely notice it until you look back and realize how far you've come. I never told my sister about the money. Every month I transfer funds to my father's account with specific instructions. For the kids' school supplies, clothes, activities. He knows it's from me. She doesn't. It's easier that way. I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for those 3 children who didn't ask to be born into this mess. My sister got a job about 6 months after the funeral. Nothing glamorous. She works at a warehouse doing inventory. It's honest work. She lives in a small apartment now, alone. The kids stay with her during the week and with their father on weekends. From what my father tells me, she's in therapy. Weekly sessions, working through everything, trying to become someone different, someone better. I'm in therapy too. Therapy. Once a month now, down from twice a week. We talk about forgiveness, about healing, about letting go of the need to control everything, about being a better mother to my son by not passing down the darkness of my past. My father lives alone in the house I grew up in. It's too big for him now, full of memories and ghosts. My sister visits on Tuesdays. I visit on Thursdays. We never overlap. It's an unspoken agreement, a boundary we both respect. Until his birthday. My father turned 70 this year. Owen convinced me we should go to the party he was having. Small, just family, nothing dramatic. I almost said no, but my son asked if we were going to see Grandpa, and I couldn't think of a good reason to refuse. We showed up at 1 o'clock. My sister and her kids were already there. The moment I walked in with Owen and my son, everything got quiet. Not uncomfortable, just careful. Everyone aware of the fragility of the moment. My sister was in the kitchen helping set up food. She looked up when we entered, and for a split second, I saw fear in her eyes. Fear that I'd leave. Fear that my presence meant conflict. Fear that we were about to ruin our father's birthday. I nodded at her. She nodded back. And that was it. Our kids gravitated toward each other immediately, the way children do. My 6-year-old son and her 10-year-old started playing with some building blocks. Her younger two joined in. They laughed and built towers and knocked them down, completely oblivious to the history that separated their mothers. My sister and I stayed on opposite sides of the room. We didn't speak directly, but we were civil to each other through our father. Could you pass this to your sister? Tell her thank you for bringing the cake. Small interactions, mediated, safe. At one point, my nephew, the oldest, the one I'd met in the hospital, came up to me. "Hi, Aunt Lindsay," he said shyly. My heart clenched. "Hi. Your son is really nice. Can we be friends?" I looked over at my sister. She was watching us, her expression unreadable. "Yes," I said. "You can be friends." Later, after cake and presents and awkward small talk, I found myself standing in the backyard watching all the kids play together. My sister came out a few minutes later, stood about 10 feet away from me, and watched them too. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, "Thank you." "For what?" "For the money. I know it's from you. Dad's terrible at keeping secrets." I didn't confirm or deny it. "My therapist says I need to accept help without analyzing the motives behind it," she continued. "That's hard for me, but I'm trying. So, thank you. It's helped. It's for the kids." "I know, but still." We watched my son teach her daughter how to do a cartwheel. She was terrible at it, but he was patient, demonstrating over and over. "They don't know," my sister said. "About us. About everything that happened. I haven't told them. Neither has my son. He knows he has an aunt and cousins, but not the whole story. Maybe they never need to know. Maybe we can let them just be cousins. Let them have what we destroyed." I thought about that. About the weight of family history. About cycles of pain and revenge. About whether it was possible to break those cycles. "We'll never be sisters again," I said. It wasn't cruel, just honest. "I know, but we don't have to be enemies either." She looked at me then, really looked at me. "No, we don't. I don't forgive you. I don't know if I ever will. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I don't hate you anymore. Not the way I used to. I'm just tired. Tired of carrying it." "Me too." My son called out then, asking me to watch him do something. I waved, told him I was watching. When I looked back, my sister had moved slightly closer. Not much. Just enough that we were standing together rather than separately. "Maybe this is enough," she said quietly. "Maybe we don't need to be family in the traditional sense. Maybe we can just coexist. For them." I looked at our children playing together, laughing, building something new that had nothing to do with what we'd destroyed. "Maybe," I agreed. "Maybe that's enough." We stood there in that backyard. Two women who'd destroyed each other and been destroyed in return, watching our children play in the ruins of what used to be a family. We weren't healed. We weren't reconciled. We weren't sisters. But we'd stopped being enemies. And for the sake of those kids, the innocent ones who deserve better than the war we'd waged, maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be enough. Because the alternative, continuing the cycle, passing down the hatred, teaching our children that betrayal was unforgivable and revenge was justice, that was a legacy neither of us wanted to leave. So we stood there, together but separate, broken but trying, not sisters, but not enemies. And somewhere in that complicated middle ground, maybe there was something like peace.